Hello, I'm Ste and I'm joined today with George. And today we're going to talk about mental health, specifically about male mental health, something us males could be better at. So, some of you may have seen myself and George around school, whether it's been an assembly, a PSHE lesson, where we could cover a range of different topics to support people with their mental health. So, before we get into things, I just want to acknowledge really that the last year, 2 years, it's been a very tough time for numerous reasons, and it's perfectly normal to be experiencing or have experienced some challenging emotions. We've had a global pandemic, which has brought the world to a standstill at times. You've had time away from your friends, schools being disrupted, exams, so much uncertainty around them. So, as I mentioned, feeling any concerns about how you feel at the moment could be perfectly normal. It is a tough time. Okay. So, like I said, male mental health. Well, going to be honest, men statistically have never been as good as women at expressing their feelings. Often men are told or brought up to man up, suck it up, or even being told that crying is unacceptable. But if we don't deal with these feelings or difficult emotions, it can only lead to more complicated emotions going forward. So I'm going to share with you some statistics which I think you'll agree are quite staggering. So 12.5% of men in the UK are suffering from one of the common mental health disorders, whether that be anxiety, depression, ADHD. So that's over 1 in 10, okay? And off the back of that, men are also less likely to access psychological therapy than women. So 1 in 10 men may feel some difficult emotions, but less likely to actually go and seek that professional support should they need it. Ultimately, as well, men are more likely to turn to alcohol or illegal drugs than women. So you can see the danger here if we don't deal with these difficult emotions, don't speak to people about it, turn to negative coping strategies, we can be in quite a difficult position. And actually, just over 3 out of 4 suicides, 76%, are by men. And suicide is the biggest cause of death for men under the age of 35. So very, very staggering statistics, and it just shows the importance of communicating, especially when we're experiencing difficult emotions.
So, as Dee has just explained, often the reason we don't want to discuss any negative emotions they're feeling is because of this fear of appearing weak. There's a misconception that to be a man or to be masculine, you should be tough and can never actually be seen to be struggling, as if we're not capable individuals in whatever it is that we do. That's at school, playing sport, doing other things in our hobbies, or potentially even just at home. However, actually, the reality is that being able to show, express, and talk about the emotions we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis is actually a massive strength. And there's actually quite a few high-profile examples of this that I'm going to talk you through now. So the first one I'd like to discuss is Greg James, who lots of you will have heard on BBC Radio 1, first thing in the morning on The Breakfast Show. And he's openly discussed how he uses the support of his friends, his family, and his super supportive wife to actually manage these sort of daily feelings of worry and anxiety. Now, he's a talented, creative, and hardworking individual, but recognizes that to do his job and to be the happiest human being that he can be, he needs to chat about some of these difficult emotions that he has on a day-to-day basis. Now, another example of this, who to me is actually the pinnacle of masculinity, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So he's an absolute giant of a human being. He's been involved in professional American football. He was a professional wrestler in WWE. He's been involved in countless films. And he himself has also opened up to say he's had some real low points on this journey to being the global success that he is now. And he openly says that the most important thing that he knows helped him making sure that he was talking to people, taking the time to discuss and voice the challenging thoughts and feelings that he was having. So yeah, really, really powerful quote there that obviously helped him manage those difficult times that he'd had. Now, someone who isn't necessarily an example that you'd want to follow, but whose story with regards to their mental health is extremely captivating, is that of Tyson Fury. So he became heavyweight champion of the world back in 2015, beating Vladimir Klitschko. But leading up to that point, he'd always kept feelings of anxiety and bouts of depression to himself whilst he was growing up. After he became world champion at the age of 27, his mental health went through a severe decline. And eventually, having been through this severe decline over a couple of years, really, he came to the conclusion that to actually get himself back where he wanted to be, both physically and mentally, he had to start talking about what he was feeling and what was going on inside his head. Now, Tyson Fury actually opened up and said that his upbringing to grips with his mental health. So he was obviously raised in a household full of fighters where no one talked about their emotions or anything to do with mental well-being. And this essentially led to him staying quiet until he had this severe mental health crisis. So yeah, couldn't be a better example really of how we should have opened up earlier, should have discussed what was going on so that hopefully it didn't lead to this severe decline that he then had.
Thanks, George. Some great examples there. And what I'm going to focus on now is something that you can do to support or maintain positive mental health. So there are numerous things you can do to support your mental health, but one of them I want to focus on is around achievement, closeness, and enjoyment. Okay, this is really quick, simple to do, and can be done each day. So the idea around achievement is we feel good when we have achieved something. So it's helpful to include these activities in your day. Doesn't matter if they're big, doesn't matter if they're small. For example, it could be doing some homework, cooking a new recipe, completing an exercise routine, learning a new skill. It doesn't really matter. But what is it that can give us that sense of achievement? Some of you who potentially may be experiencing some tough or difficult emotions, it may even just be getting out of bed, having that shower, and getting that sense of achievement when you're feeling low. Okay. The other thing is around closeness. So we are social animals. We like to be around people, we like to interact, and that's potentially been taken away for a lot of us through lockdown. So, what can we actually do to stay engaged and stay interacting with our friends and our family? Well, I'm sure many of you have social media or smartphones. So, is there a way of getting creative with ways to connect with one each other? So, you may not be able to see people face to face, but can you do a virtual quiz, a virtual chat, video chat, anything like that to stay connected with your friends as well? And the other thing is around enjoyment. So sometimes when we're experiencing difficult emotions or worries or feeling low, we often stop doing the things that we enjoy. And it's really, really important to add these activities into your day so that you can continue getting some enjoyment from your day. So to support this, what we've done is we've created a sheet which can be completed every day. And each sheet is a week, it's a 7 day, it's a sheet of 7 days. And it's to record something that you can do to give you that sense of achievement, something to give you that sense of closeness, and something to give you that sense of enjoyment. So in the details below, there's a downloadable link to download that sheet, and you can start doing that tomorrow.
So I also noticed that a friend or family member of yours seems to be experiencing some difficult emotions. So what I want to share with you now is 5 or so tips that you can do to actually help look out for them and hopefully support them a little bit better. So the first one of these is just starting a conversation. And the first thing to say on this really is that you don't need to be an expert to actually talk to someone who may have some challenging emotions. While you may feel a little bit uncomfortable talking to someone about your concerns regarding their mental health, simply letting them know that you care can actually make the world a difference to how they're actually feeling and might actually pave the way for a further conversation down the line. An easy way to start this conversation is just tell them that you've noticed a little bit of a change and they don't seem the usual self, or potentially even describing some of the change you've noticed in their mood or behavior. Tell them that you're worried and just raise the question about what is potentially bothering them. The main thing here is just not being afraid to ask, and certainly not being afraid to ask twice, because asking someone if they're okay or how they are is such a common question, but sometimes asking twice that first question can be enough just to give them a little bit of a forum to really share how they're actually feeling. When a friend actually takes the time to tell you how they're feeling, just remember it's a privilege, and it actually says a lot about you and the relationship you have with them that they're willing to share. And that brings me quite nicely onto the second point, which is just to listen. Now, this might seem obvious, but really listen carefully when someone opens up to you about how they're feeling. Try to let them share without you interrupting, not trying to finish any sentences for them or making any assumptions about what they were going to say. This can really be useful in making your mates feel more comfortable. And if you are worried that by saying nothing that they'll think you're not listening, you can show that you by nodding or potentially repeating back what they've just said to you back to them, just to check that you understand and give them an opportunity to correct you if you've potentially got things a little bit wrong. Sometimes these conversations can be quite tricky or potentially overwhelming face to face. So if we're going to articulate exactly what's going on, you can suggest that they write it down, whether it's on a text or a piece of paper. And that way they can take their own time just to think about what they're trying to say without worrying how it might come across in that face-to-face conversation. If a friend is trying to explain how they're feeling, it's actually really important to remember that it could be the first time they've spoken to anyone about it at all. So it might be for that reason that they actually struggle to put it into words. They might not go into lots of detail, and they could say some, broad statements like, I'm finding things quite tough right now, or I'm just not feeling okay. They might actually share something more specific, whether it's about something that's going on at home, whether it's something cool, see anything within other friendships or relationship they're having, or even just feelings of isolation or loneliness. There are a few key things you want you to keep in mind if a friend of yours potentially starts this conversation, and that's actually where the third point comes in. And that is just to reassure them and let them know that their feelings are valid. So if someone has opened up to you about how they're, a really positive way to respond is to reassure them they've done the right thing by talking about it, and that it's perfectly fine to feel the way that they do. No matter what it is that they're struggling with, the emotions they're feeling in that given moment are real to them. So it can be helpful to remind your friend of this and that it's perfectly fine to feel the way that they do. Now, fourth point is that actions can speak louder than words. So sometimes all it takes to let your friend know that you're there is a small gesture, whether it's a message checking in with them, or potentially just sending them, an Instagram post that made you laugh, or tagging them on something on Facebook. It doesn't have to be something big, but it's enough to actually just let them know that you care. Now, the final tip for you is just to remember it's not all on you. So it's understandable if your friend has shared something with you that you want to fix it and do everything that you can to help. But remember, it's not all on you, and it's responsibility alone to help them. You've done so much by being someone that your friend can open up to. And there are lots of other people and places you can go to for further help, whether that's other friends, potentially your family members or their family members, or potentially another teacher or trusted adult.
Thanks, George. 5 really great points there. So in this very short conversation that we've had, we've talked about some examples of people who have openly come out and expressed the difficult concerns and feelings they've been experiencing. We've also talked about a little bit of a practical exercise you can do to support your mental health, maintain it. And George has shared with you 5 very great tips to not only support yourself, but also support others around you. So please feel free to use the downloadable sheet below. And also what I would say is, if you have any questions for us, you can ask them to myself or George at support@ilisten.im. It has been a tough time for us. Hopefully, going forward, it's going to get a little bit easier. But something I think George said, which was really, really important around masculinity, is that actually to show and express and talk about these emotions we experience on a day-to-day basis is actually a massive strength.